What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. First of all, want to give a massive thank you to all the support the channel has gotten recently. We actually managed to gain 100 plus subscribers in just a week. Insane, man. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. But today I want to make a video that's actually a bit more on the positive side of things. Basically, everyone who's clicked on this video, everyone who watches Dead by Daylight content, or even just plays the game, we all know that the game itself is in a very unbalanced state, right? And many YouTubers, including YouTubers like Minskull, who typically are a bit more positive or relaxed, even they themselves are starting to break. And I recently watched one of his videos. In the whole time I was watching, I was thinking, man, he's spitting straight bars, pretty much. I'll have a link in the description if you guys haven't seen it yet, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is that anyone who's watched my content for a while knows that I am no stranger to being a very harsh critic for Dead by Daylight. I am brutally honest, straight to the point, and sometimes I go a little overboard. Let's be real here. Sometimes I get a little too much into the feely feels, so to speak, right? Lately, everyone, even creators like Astarva, Minskull, Quiet Kills, the list goes on and on. Basically, every major DBD content creator agrees that the game is not in a good state right now, which really sucks given the fact that the 10th year anniversary is literally right around the corner. To put a more positive spin on things, I do think it would be nice if we actually sat down and talked about what the primary problems are and what some healthy things could be done to actually make the game better for everyone, not just one side or the other. One of the biggest things that I've always talked about being added to this game that would help so much is a ping wheel or a communication wheel. Something that would help solo queue survivors communicate with their random teammates. Think something like Apex Legends or basically just any game that has a communication system. Even something as small and simple as like Rainbow Six Siege, right? You could just ping something with a button on your keyboard or your mouse and be like, hey man, I'm over here doing this, right? That alone would make solo queue so much more bearable. Another thing for killers primarily, I'm a killer main, everyone knows this, but killers primarily are in a very bad state right now, just across the board. I mean, yeah, if you play Nurse, if you play Blight, if you play Ghoul, you're probably doing just fine, but the pallet density update killed so many of M1 killers just straight up across the board, if not entirely. And I do think it's a little unfair that killers like Ghostface, Skull Merchant, Trapper, Wraith, basically any killer that's, 4.4 or lacks the ability to have a teleport, I do think it's pretty unfair that they have to actually face all of the added pallets that were implemented for the pallet density update. And I think probably the easiest way to just straight up make these killers playable again is to basically get rid of these pallets for them entirely, right? And kind of make it back to the way it used to be, where most maps only have 10 to maybe 12 pallets instead of anywhere from 15 to 20, right? Again, do I see behavior doing this? Probably not, no, because they have actually mentioned before that they don't plan on readdressing or looking back at the pallet density update, which kind of sucks, but again, the whole point of this video is to really, instead of just pointing out problems, actually come up with positive solutions, right? And another thing is survivor perks. I mean, even the Jason PTB, oh my goodness, cross-examination is extremely broken, and I could sit here and talk about that one perk for an entire video, but the reality is that perk is extremely broken amongst many other ones, perks like Vigil, that have literally no prerequisite to activate the perk, and it just counters basically 90% of killer add-ons and even some killer powers almost entirely. That's just extremely unhealthy, and it needs to be nerfed. And you're probably thinking, okay, well, if Vigil got nerfed, then what would, what would the point be, right? Because, like, we're only making one negative change in a survivor perk, we're not adding any positives. Well, here's the thing. Vigil is one of the few survivor perks that is so over the top and so easy to use. It's genuinely, at least to my knowledge, The only thing that really comes close to it is Ghost Notes, but Vigil is legitimately the only perk of its kind. It just straight up almost hard counters the vast majority of negative effects like exposed, hemorrhage, all of that stuff, right? And it ultimately makes playing certain killer builds almost entirely useless when you are facing a SWF or just someone who's using it in general. A great example is Nemesis Friends Till the End, right? The exposed effect from Friends Till the End is reduced by 66% if you're using Vigil or someone near you is using Vigil and you remain with them or near them for that entire duration. It goes from 10 seconds to about, what, 4 seconds? That's not good, man. Another thing is, too, with diminishing returns. That was implemented a few updates ago, and it really has only served to hurt killers. When it was first implemented, I actually was kind of looking forward to it. I thought it would be really good. I very quickly realized that it only hurts killers, really. I mean, yeah, there might be an off chance you're trying to run a full percentage-based healing build, but given the fact that old fast track existed, then got nerfed into oblivion, so now most people never use it, it just feels like behavior is kind of, I mean, behavior's been going in this direction of one step forward, two steps backward for a couple of years now, honestly. In the end, I don't think, and well, I don't really think it would be optimal to just go through and buff and nerf every single killer power or add-on or perk. It would take too much time, and while I don't think that's optimal, I mean, it could still be done. I do genuinely think the easiest and most beneficial thing we could do is to simply just remove the pallet density effects on certain killers, right? Any killer that has an M1 that is 4.4 or 4.6 and lacks the ability to teleport reliably, right? So killers like Hag probably wouldn't be included with this because unless you're running her Eerie add-on, the only way to teleport to your traps is to just hope a survivor actually sets them off. Wait, I think there's actually another add-on that allows you to teleport to her traps. It's been a long time since I've played her, man, but really, just in the end, there's a lot that could be talked about, and man, I do also think there is one more thing I'd like to talk about, and that is the overabundance of perks in Dead by Daylight, right? Everyone loves looking forward to the 3 new perks for a survivor or a killer, right? Now, personally, I think we've gotten to a point where we should probably stop tying perks to specific survivors or killers, or just rework the shrine entirely to make it easier to obtain new perks, right? Or older perks that you don't have, because no one loves opening the shrine only to see 4 perks they already own, 3 or 4, right? I think what we should do instead, behavior, is to make 1 new perk with, you know, each killer and survivor instead of 3, as we've been doing for years now. Because the reality is, when I'm going through all of these pages of perks, over half of them are pretty much useless, right? It really would be beneficial if behavior kind of slowed down, if not halted entirely, with new perks just for a little while, which I do understand there is a valid argument to be made that behavior would probably lose some money, because one of the main driving home factors in someone making a purchase for a survivor or a killer is their perks, right? That's just common sense, but I don't know. I think if Dead by Daylight continues releasing this many perks with every single chapter, 3 to 6, it's going to become very, very, very hard to keep the game in a balanced state, and it's kind of showing right now, really. There are so many different survivor perks that we could talk about and how they make the game much more unbalanced. You know, I haven't even mentioned SWFs yet, but you know, everyone's talked about SWFs. You don't see solo queue survivors running quick and quiet head-on Iron Will, right? You don't see them running that. You don't see solo queue survivors running Decisive Strike, Dead Hard, Shoulder the Burden live. You don't see survivors doing that stuff, right? Solo queue survivors, rather. Ultimately, there are a lot of perk changes that could be done, and it would be cool if there was an actual Operation Help for this game, like a PTB that just stayed up for a month or two, and behavior just simply tweaked perks, you know, just left, right, and center, slowly but surely, got players' feedback from it. Just kind of went with that, right? I don't know. I think there's a lot to be said about Dead by Daylight, but again, the whole reason I make these videos, it's because I actually care about the health of this game, the state that it's in, and I do genuinely want to see this game get better, right? I used to play this game so much during a point in time where everyone could have fun regardless of what perks they used, right? It doesn't matter what killer you played or survivor. You could use Dead Hard, Decisive Strike. It didn't matter, right? Because back then there weren't as many second chance perks and there weren't nearly as many pallets. A lot of the meta back then was so much more simple, right? And because of that, you didn't really have to sweat too much. You didn't have to worry about too many perks, right? You didn't have to worry about making this wrong move or that wrong move as the killer. The game just felt so much more simple back then, really. That's the point I'm trying to get to. And despite all of these many different perks, right? Despite Shoulder the Burden being a thing now, even though it wasn't back when I stopped playing, right? Despite all of the evolving changes that have taken place in my absence, I do still think it is entirely possible for this game to reach the more casual state that it was once in, right? It is possible. And in reality, this can be done with one video at a time. Regardless, let me know what you guys think down below. What do you think about my opinions or possible solutions to these problems regarding Dead by Daylight's imbalance? I'm not the first one to come up with these ideas, let's be honest. I have seen a lot of videos talking about these ideas, and the reason why so many people are kind of like regurgitating these ideas is because it's genuinely like the most healthy thing that could be done for this game, right? One thing I have talked about, though, that I haven't really seen anyone talk about before is the idea of putting a hard limit on second chance perks or bully perks in general on Swifts. This would be a little bit difficult to do, but basically the whole idea is if you're playing with 3 or more people, there will begin to be perk restrictions, right? So instead of you being able to run Decisive Strike, Dead Hard, Vigil, Sprint Burst, you'll only be able to use maybe just Decisive Strike or just Dead Hard, right? Think of it as like 1 second chance perk per survivor to limit the insane amount of frustrations and hand-holding that so many Swifts do genuinely just abuse to make the killer's life absolutely miserable and punish them for simply trying to go for hooks, which has caused the new slug meta to even exist to begin with. Without getting too ranty, this is something I've thought about, and maybe one day I'll make an entire video on it. I don't know, though. It's the problem with this idea, though, is that you have to do it perfectly, because if you mismanage it even a little bit, it becomes almost too restrictive. You want to restrict the amount of perks and the certain type of perks that a Swift can choose and can use all in one squad, but you also don't want to make it feel like they can't use any perk synergies at all, right? Just something to think about. Like, as a killer main, I don't want the game to be so heavily favored towards me to the point where it feels like I'm just winning every single game with a single click, right? I don't want that. No, of course not. The game should be fair for everybody, not just overwhelmingly one side and the other side feels, depending on the killer they're playing or the map they get, just an immediate loss. But again, it does seem that a lot of Survivor players somewhere along the line kind of forgot that because this is an ASYM, 1v4, that the 1 is supposed to have slightly more power, if not moderately more power, than the 4. That's the whole point, right? Minskull put it perfectly. He said, "When I lose, I want to be outplayed, not outperked." Regardless, thank you all for watching. God bless. Take care. Peace.